Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Digital ATN's AI Lunch and Learn. My name is Jose Adorno. I am the Digital ATN coordinator. I'm accompanied by Mary Kate Haverly, which is Digital ATN specialist, and we're excited to welcome you to our final AI Lunch and Learn session. Throughout this week, we've had an incredible lineup of presenters exploring AI across a variety of contexts and scenarios, from navigating AI safely, ethically, and effectively, to understanding its growing impact on the workforce and career development. Today, we'll be focusing on how AI can support and impact English language learners. Before I introduce the presenter, use the chat, introduce yourself, where you're from, um, any questions that you might have. You could put it in the chat as well. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if there's any questions that come up and parts that Rachel will be answering questions, we could bring them up. Um, our presenter today is Rachel Riggs, who serves as a senior technical advisor at World Education. Many of you may also recognize her as the host of the Outstanding EdTech Strategy Sessions, also known as the Lightning Talks. It's a monthly online professional development series hosted by World Education in partnership with the Ideal Consortium. Happens every second Friday, but the last one was released in May. We have a list of recordings that we could share to you if you're interested in watching of any of the previous sessions. In addition to this work, she has also been a leader in advancing AI in education through initiatives such as the EdTech Makerspaces and a wide range of professional development opportunities. At this time, I'd like to welcome Rachel Riggs. Thank you so much for presenting for us.
It is a joy and a pleasure. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Um, Wish I was there in person. I do love Connecticut. I was at the CASE conference a couple of years ago, which was a joy. I had such a great experience. I see someone from Wallingford, and I am also a big fan of Anthony's. So good. We're all just one big happy family. Um, Hope you're enjoying a good lunch. I am going to be presenting today on expanding access for English language learners with AI, and just want to share some different evidence-based strategies and approaches that we know work well for English language learners and connect those to some of the really innovative ways that we're seeing AI used in the field to hopefully give you guys an idea of, if you're already using AI, what are some of the evidence-based benefits of what you're doing? And if you are still exploring AI, maybe this will give you some ideas for things that you can do that we know promote learning for English language learners. So thank you for having me. Buen provecho if you're eating lunch. Bon appetit. And let's roll right into it. I appreciate Jose's wonderful introduction, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about this, but we do have an initiative at World Education that's called AI for Learning and Work. And just so you know where some of my insights come from, I lead that initiative and we do research. So we field test different new AI tools in adult education programs. We also convene various stakeholders like teachers, program directors, state leaders for professional development and learning around AI. And we also curate and align and aggregate AI literacy resources for learners. So we're really fortunate to kind of have exposure to different ways that AI is impacting the field. So that we can highlight all of the amazing work that's being done. We'll kind of split up today's session into two sections that align with this idea that teachers have a dual role in the age of AI. So as teachers, we're all navigating kind of two different parts of that role. One is to teach with AI. And so really figuring out, how do you appropriately apply AI-based tools in the classroom? Um, oh, goodness. My slides aren't moving. Okay, hold on. Bear with me. Here it comes. It's coming. Sorry, guys. Oh,
There you
wait.
go.
You're seeing the new one now?
I see them now. Yeah. It was a
Oh my
static
gosh.
on the title. Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay. Um, okay, great. Um, well, I just kind of even that top part of the top annoys me. So this should be a nice big full screen view. Okay. Um, so yes, teaching with AI. So teachers are figuring out like, how do I use AI? Because there are a lot of uses for teachers to streamline different tasks, to do lesson planning, etc. And then the other part of it is teaching for AI. So how do I promote in learners and help learners develop the skills, knowledge, and attitudes that are necessary to navigate AI from a user perspective. And so that's a concept that is called AI literacy. So we'll talk a little bit today about using tools in the classroom that leverage AI. And then we'll also touch on briefly at the end some of the things that teachers are doing to promote AI literacy in language learning classrooms. Before I get started, I know that a big question that people have is, well, what are the different AI tools that adult educators are using? In fact, one thing I try to stay away from are phrases like "I'm using AI," because that's a very broad and not very descriptive way to talk about what we're doing with AI. So these are some of the tools we know adult educators use. There are general purpose tools like the ones that you see in the first row, and those are the chatbots or the workspace tools like Copilot, which you might see floating around everywhere if you're a Microsoft user, or ChatGPT, which you may have tried out when there was all the hype around ChatGPT, which is a more standalone chatbot. So we know that those are being used widely. There are some other tools that you may not even think of as AI tools, but have been using AI. So some of them are lesson planning tools. So you might have heard of like Magic School, Diffit, Twee, Brisk. And so those are designed for teachers to help them with their lesson planning. There are AI features in some of the traditional engagement tools that we know of. I mean, Kahoot has been one of the most popular ed tech tools for years now. And so, of course, they have built generative AI features into Kahoot, as well as other common tools like Padlet. There are new and old adaptive learning platforms. So Pace AI is a platform that uses AI to give more personalized learning directly to students. And then, some of these things that have been around, like Conmigo, is associated with Khan Academy, and that's been around for a while. So again, AI being integrated into some of the traditional and newer tools. There are tools that are kind of multimodal, and so they help create audio, video, and different types of media using AI. I'm sorry, yeah, multimodal. Yeah, you get the point. There are design tools. So Canva has a whole Magic Studio. They use AI. Different productivity tools. I know a lot of teachers love Notebook LM, which is a Google product that helps you kind of bring in different sources so that you can interact with your sources in a more chatbot, natural language kind of way. So all of this just to kind of say that using AI is very broad, and I'm not going to show you how to use a specific tool during today's session. Although I'm happy to if I'm giving examples and you'd like to see what that looks like in action, I can do my best to showcase that kind of thing. But what I'll focus on today mainly are some of like the strategies that connect to language learning and examples of what it might look like to use AI in a given activity with those strategies. And really, the strategies usually can be leveraged with a wide variety of different AI-driven tools. A lot of the ideas that I'll share today, like I said, come from the work that we've done with teachers and adult educators more generally. And some of the examples of prompts and ways that adult educators are using AI are available in what we call this open prompt book. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. That's no problem, Lisa. We're glad you made it to the open prompt book. So the open prompt book is something you can explore if you're just getting started and you want to learn a little bit about writing prompts, about some of the basic ethical issues with AI in adult education, but then also see a whole collection of different examples of how other teachers are leveraging the technology. So before I get into sharing the meat today, I wanted to do a chatterfall. Have you guys ever done a chatterfall? Do you know what that is? Okay, Jose does. So this is where basically I give a question and I give you a minute to think about it. And then when I say go, you press enter to enter your response in the chat. Okay, so I'll pose a question. You'll write your response, but then you'll wait. And when I say go, you'll press enter and we'll see a chatter fall of responses in the chat. Okay, so let's start with this question. Okay, it's not a question, it's a imperative. Name a strategy that works really well with English language learners. This is a teaching strategy that you know of that works really well with English language learners. So write it now. I'm gonna give you some thinking and writing time, but don't press enter yet, okay? Okay, three, two, one, go. Fun. Okay, great ideas here. So repetition and practice, role play, sentence frames, turn, pair, share, everyday conversation practice, I think is what that is referring to. Turn and talk, okay, so we're promoting some conversation. Pamela's is total physical response, which is one that was worth Googling. It's a very traditional method used in English language learning classrooms. Okay, so these are some strategies that work well with English language learners. And so today we will be focusing on strategies that work well with English language learners and how does AI plug into that? So thinking more about learning first, how do we accomplish the learning as the main priority? And then where does AI fit into what we know works really well? All right, number two, rank your AI knowledge from 0 to 3. 0 means this is your first time learning about AI, and 3 means you have a strong knowledge base that you're continuously adding to. And then, 1 and 2 are somewhere in between. Oh, wait, Janelle, wait, Fatim, it's a chatterfall. Hold on. Okay. All right, so everybody enter it, but don't press enter yet. Put it in the chat, but don't press enter yet. 0 to 3. 3, 2, 1, enter. Okay, okay. So lots of ones and then some feeling more confident toward the 2 and 3 side. Okay, good. So it's not your first time mostly, but maybe still just getting started. Now, use an emoji to describe your perspective of AI's usefulness for teaching. So if you're in the chat box, there should be a little smiley face icon in the bottom toolbar. You can click that up to open an emoji library. I want you to find an emoji that kind of expresses what you think about how useful AI is for teaching and learning. You can put it in there, but don't press enter yet. Thank you, Jose, for adding a screenshot of that. I'm going to give everybody a minute to find their emoji. Three, two, one, enter. Ah, okay. Mostly positive. Good. All right. So let's dive into it and be ready to share more as we're going along. So we'll start first with generative AI as a teacher tool. So how can I use generative AI in my practice as a teacher? There are some learning first strategies that we know work really well for English language learning. And the first one is contextualizing. So when you are contextualizing instruction, you are presenting the English language learning content and practice in a real world context. So we as ESL instructors, we usually are creating kind of contextualized scenarios for people to practice in the class, or we might even have materials that are contextualized. And this means, like, if I'm teaching learners how to use the 5W questions, then I'll probably have them practice that in the context of talking with their doctor, or maybe in the context of the grocery store. Okay, so it's not unheard of. This should be a pretty familiar strategy to all of us that we've seen in different ways in our textbooks or that we've leveraged in our own classrooms. And what we know is that generative AI can help teachers develop passages and activities that retain the academic focus while being presented in different scenarios. So if we have a certain target for language learning, generative AI is good at helping us think about how we can present that and actually create materials for how we can present that in different contexts and scenarios that will be relevant to the learners that we're working with. So here's an example from an educator in Texas who is teaching reading skills in a science context. And that educator worked with a chatbot first to develop a lesson plan. So the theme that he was going for was our environment, Earth and space. So thinking about like environmental issues. And the academic skill or the language skill that he was targeting was skimming web pages. So he kind of used a chatbot to help him come up with ideas of how to connect those two things. So how can I present web page skimming and scanning in the context of the environment? And worked with a chatbot to develop this lesson plan that he then obviously edited. You can see some of the hyperlinks that he created here with his different resources for his lesson. Then he used generative AI in Canva to create a mock web page. So he was kind of thinking, I want to have learners skim and scan a web page, but I don't want them to kind of get lost down rabbit holes in real web pages as they're practicing this skill. So I want to give them a really contained environment to practice it, but that's still contextualized and interesting for them. So he used Canva's Magic Studio to generate this mock web page that learners could scroll through and skim and scan for key information. And then he used generative AI in Google Forms to develop a skill checking little quiz that they could fill out after they skimmed the Canva webpage. And so there are lots of features now in Google Forms that leverage generative AI. You can start by generating the entire form using just a simple prompt, like create a quiz on um, what you guys present perfect. Or you can actually, from the teacher's perspective, have it summarize some of the responses, especially open-ended responses that you've given it. And this teacher published all of this with a Creative Commons license so that other teachers could take these materials and use them and adapt them for their own purposes. The second learning first approach that we've seen a lot of is differentiating. And so in differentiating, you are offering learners different content, engaging them in a different process, or asking for a different product. So those are three forms of differentiation. You're either giving them different articles to read, that's the content. Maybe you're engaging them in a different process. So, one person is going to do the reading with audio. The other person is going to do the reading with no audio. Or maybe you're asking them for a different product at the end of the differentiation. So maybe one student is going to give a presentation, but another student is going to write a report. Okay, so these are different ways of differentiating. And those are from, and I should add a, citation here, Carol Ann Tomlinson. So I'm just going to add that here to give her due credit for the content process product ways of differentiating. So how do people use AI in this process? A lot of general and specialized AI tools can simplify reading passages and provide ideas and materials for scaffolding. And so this is a way of accommodating learner variability, which we all know in ESL, we usually have learners, they may come to us at a similar level, like maybe we have an intermediate class, but when we dig deeper, there are different levels within their language skills and comfort. So there's always some form of learner variability in our classrooms. So this is an example of some of the tools that teachers use to accomplish this. I've seen it a lot with releveling text. In fact, I'm kind of curious, and I bet probably people here have done this. So let us know in the chat if this is a way that you are using AI and what tool do you use to relevel text? I would love to hear that. Um, Give you guys a minute to think about that and type it. I know I don't like to hear somebody talking when I'm typing. So what we've seen is they'll take an open educational resource like the passages that are on readingskillsfortoday.com. So that's a website that has all of these free and openly licensed leveled readers. And a teacher might want to take one like the history of pizza, which we all want to learn about if we're being honest. Um, and they might want to adjust that by level. Of course, they could adjust it by topic. Maybe I have a student who wants to learn more about the history of spaghetti. But a lot of what I have seen is releveling a text. Okay, Jose uses Diffit to do this same thing. Cool. So you might have something like the history of pizza, and you can put it into an app like HemingwayApp.com, where it will tell you what the readability of the text is and give you some insights to help you adjust the content to different reading levels. Hemingway also has, I do believe you have to pay for it, but it will also just rewrite the whole thing for you at a different level. But I really like the more manual process as a language educator of deciding what to change, just kind of seeing, okay, well, this sentence is difficult, so I could change that. But as language teachers, there are some aspects of the text that we probably really want to keep intact, like key vocabulary. So for me, I like Hemingway app because it just gives me the information that I need to make the changes myself. But the same process can be applied, with a chat bot like ChatGPT or Claude. Jose uses Diffit. Lisa says, I've mostly used AI. And Lisa, I would ask if you would tell us what tools specifically that leverage AI. Because, for example, Hemingway does use AI, but so does ChatGPT. So it's helpful for us to know what kinds of tools you're using to relevel text. So yeah, I like Hemingway, but again, you can accomplish this with a lot of different tools. So those are some examples of contextualizing and differentiating, which are two of the really high yield use cases for language learners. In other words, or I'm sorry, for language teachers, because we oftentimes have content that we feel is not totally relevant. Maybe we've gotten it from a website somewhere, or we've gotten it from a curriculum that's more for children. And so we're thinking about how do we contextualize this for adults? And we're oftentimes faced with different levels and a lot of learner variability in our classrooms. So differentiation is another area where it's really worth investing the time to learn different AI tools to help you accomplish those tasks. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, great. Yeah, ChatGPT. Okay, awesome. Um, okay, clever, Fatim. Yeah, so Fatim is adding students' names into the readings. I've seen a teacher who does something similar. I can't remember if she has the students do it or she does it, but they'll take like a passage and they'll change it to different cultures. So it could be like a passage about classical music, and one student changes it to like K-pop or something, which I think is a really fun idea for using AI. I mean, the cool thing about the AI tools that we use is that they're based on what's known as a large language model. So, what those language models are really good at is like changing text genre and different language features, taking something and changing it from uh, present perfect to present progressive, like those kinds of things. It's just really good at language tasks. And so that makes it really useful for language learners and language educators. So we're going to shift now into using generative AI as a learning tool. So what can learners do? And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about a student that I had during, like right before the pandemic. I was teaching in family literacy. Does anybody else here teach in a family literacy classroom? And I had a student who I'll call Amma, that's not their real name, who was really eager and hardworking, and she always showed up very prepared with all of her supplies. She was very organized, very motivated. But when I would explain kind of what we were going to do as a group, I had a lot of Spanish speakers, and she spoke a language called Twi. And so I would explain what we were going to do as a group. I speak Spanish, so I was able to kind of help a little bit with others for their understanding, and they helped each other a lot. But she, struggled, and she was more at kind of the beginner level, especially when it came to listening comprehension. So she asked me for a dictionary and translation tools that supported her home language, which was Twi. And I looked all over the place for online and physical dictionaries. I think I ended up finding one dictionary that we had to purchase. So it was really hard to find any tools that supported her language. And I wonder if you guys have ever had a similar experience where you're trying to communicate something to a learner that's just kind of operational in the classroom, and you aren't able to. What are some of those languages that you have found are really under-resourced in your classes? I know you're eating lunch. I should probably stop peppering you with questions. Okay, thanks, Brenda. Brenda says Farsi. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of languages like that. But one strategy that we also know really supports language learners, not just in terms of their learning outcomes, but also in terms of their engagement and persistence in language learning, is known as translanguaging. And so, using translanguaging and translation, we can help remove some of the barriers to learning. So, what is translanguaging? Translanguaging to me is more of a mindset than an exact practice. But it is this kind of approach to teaching that allows learners to use their entire linguistic repertoire or all their language resources to process, learn, and communicate in the class. So I don't know about you guys, but I started out my career in English only classrooms, like where the policy was that you could not speak any other languages during class time, and teachers could not introduce other languages during class time. And um, and so, translanguage is kind of the opposite mindset, where actually it is beneficial to learners to enable them to use all of their language resources. Okay, I'm looking at Fatim's comment here. When Fatim started 6 years ago, there were quite a few languages that were under-resourced, at least. So there's a majority of them, at least. Yeah. Yeah, there has been a huge push, and actually AI has really helped give us more resources to support more languages, which is why it's a tool that aligns well with this approach of translanguaging. So that's the why AI. Large and small language models have been trained on vast corpora of authentic language from various genres. And so, if you're familiar with corpus, it's basically a huge database of language from different types of dialogue. So, it could be like a lot of text from news segments, a lot of text from informational text. And over the decades, we've been using those corpora to develop grammar books, to develop dictionaries, and now we're using them to train AI. And so AI has a lot of language to draw on. And I mentioned small language models because large language models are the things that ChatGPT are built on. But increasingly, people are creating small language models for under-resourced languages. So ChatGPT has been trained primarily on content on the internet, and content on the internet is primarily in dominant languages like German, Chinese, English. Spanish. And so small language models are what computer scientists are using to boost the resources for languages like Twi or Farsi that don't have as much representation online. So just a little interesting fun fact. So if we're talking about unlocking learning with translanguaging and translation, an example of that might be that students are discussing the logic of a complex grammar concept in their home language with a chatbot and maintaining a table of comparisons. Okay, so we can think about a grammar concept. Let me try to think about one myself off the top of my head. What's a complex this happens when I try to improvise. A complex grammar cut like what am I thinking about? Like dangling modifiers and stuff like that. So we might have something like that that's kind of difficult to explain and give sufficient examples for. So it might be helpful for learners to unpack their meta-linguistic awareness or to kind of be able to explain why languages work in that way by leveraging their home language. So they might interact with a chatbot to compare, thank you, Lisa, phrasal verbs. That's another great example of something that's kind of complex. It's not easy to decode just on the surface. So it requires a lot of kind of parsing it out. And that's a great way to use a chatbot to kind of talk to a chatbot about phrasal verbs. And what do those look like in my home language, if they're even utilized in my home language? What do they look like in English? And compare and contrast. So that's one idea. And like I said, this improves what's called metalinguistic awareness, which enables learners to then recognize different patterns in grammar, syntax, and cognates as they continue moving through their language learning journey. So I wanted to see what ideas we have for this. So if we want to unlock learning with translanguaging and translation, and our ultimate goal is to lower the affective filter, which is basically that filter we have that if we don't lower it, it's basically kind of like an emotional response filter. And if it's up, then we're not doing a lot of linguistic risk taking and practice. So to lower the affective filter reduces anxiety and encourages linguistic risk taking. How would you guys do that with AI? So just think about that for a minute. Like I want students to not be too nervous about a task I'm giving them. I want them to feel like they can take some risks. I want them to get enough practice, but they're shy about interacting with their peers. How would you use AI for that? Okay, we have some ideas coming through. Brenda's not sure. That's fine, Brenda. Pamela has the idea to create a personalized chatbot for each student. Okay, so they can have a chatbot, I think, to practice with, which is a great idea. And another idea would be that you put learners in small groups to discuss things and you enable them to use AI translation tools or a chatbot during the conversation, right? So that's kind of freeing them up to have more fluid interaction with each other, but to retain the language learning aspect, and to encourage that social participation, maybe you have them synthesize or summarize the discussion in English. So you're using that translanguaging and that translation during the conversation to promote more interaction and generate really more language and ideas. And then they synthesize or summarize that in English. Okay, and Pamela wants to know how to create a personalized, I'm sorry, Fatima wants to know how do you create a personalized chatbot for each student? And I think Jose probably has some resources at Digital ATDN that could give you maybe some tutorials on that. But almost every chatbot now has the ability, depending on your account type, of course, to create kind of this little mini chatbot. So in Gemini, for example, I mean, I can show you guys this real quick. I said I wouldn't be able to do that. So let me just show you. In Gemini, so I have a work approved Gemini account. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Pamela. Um, okay, wow, they changed the interface overnight. Great, lovely heavens. Where do gems go? There are gems. Gems. And you'll see a couple that I've created here, usually playing around, but sometimes these are like legitimate little things that I need, like a IMLS budget manager, for example. Um, so you can create different gems. So you could create gems or have learners. I think even preferable would be to maybe have learners create their own language learning gem. So it's like their own little chatbot that is totally dedicated to helping them practice English. That way they can use their account for other ways too. So they could use their gem when they want to practice English, but then use normal Gemini if they're looking for a recipe or something. They don't want someone bugging them about practice your English. So this could be like my little English practice gem. And then you would give it a description. You want to give it nice, detailed instructions. If you look in the prompt book, you'll see some different components of a prompt that are important to include. And when you're using gems, you want to give it steps for how to interact. So, in addition to a traditional prompt where you're asking it to generate something or do something, when you're creating these little mini assistants, you want to give them exactly how to interact. So, you could say something like, I'm going to come to you with a document or article, and you are going to be a language tutor and walk me through the linguistic aspects of the article, for example. You can upload knowledge. Those would be different files that it would refer to. Yeah, and oh, yeah, we have a hand raised, so let's get into that.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking.
That's
Um,
okay.
the question was, I thought the teacher makes individual gems for each student, not that I go on their accounts and create it. I wasn't sure on,
Yeah,
can I make
so
it
you
from
can
my
share
account
these.
and share it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can share gems. And And I think that's like a great way if you want to have maybe some oversight into what they're doing. That would be a good way to do it. So let me close without saving and show you guys. It'll depend on like what kind of account you have, what tool you're using, how you can share it with. So for example, let's see. This is my JSI, so I can share it with anybody in my organization. I can add people by their email here to use my gem. So yeah, it's kind of like a doc. Like you can share it in a similar way, and people can interact with it. Good question. And I love the idea. I mean, I've heard of university professors who, like, for example, use that as an assignment. So they're actually looking at the conversations that students are having as a way of measuring their learning. Sounds super time consuming to me. Um, so keep it here, but do interrupt me if you want to see something. Um, All right, so yes, that's an example of translanguaging and one of the benefits. Now let's think about another one. So let's say that I want to use translanguaging and translation, and what I'm doing is providing urgent class messages in all languages possible. So I'm using AI to translate classes canceled to all the languages in my class so I can send out that message. What is the effect on learning in that example? Why would I do that if we're thinking about learning first? This is kind of a tricky one because it actually doesn't have much to do with the language learning. It has to do with what we know about what helps people engage and persist in learning. Okay. Yeah, so that's a great idea that like students have to understand what the topic is. So if I'm maybe giving instructions for something, it just has to be clear or they can't engage. Um, yeah, consideration to them, learning first, tool second, all right on point here. And the idea here being that I might use AI tools to translate things to help learners feel a sense of a belonging, which we know enhances engagement and persistence in learning. So again, it's kind of in opposition to the ideas of locking down languages when we're teaching English and taking a different approach where we're helping students feel the social supports of learning in addition to linguistic supports. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can think of a lot of great reasons why you might want to translate important messages for learners. And that's a great way, I think, to use AI. Certainly enables us to do more than what we used to be able to do with English to Spanish dictionaries or even Google Translate used to be a lot more limited. So AI has unlocked a lot for teachers to do in that sense. I don't know if any of you use something called Remind, or I think Remind does it and Talking Points, but these are like messaging apps. Talking Points has been around for many years, and it's an app that's typically used in K-12 schools that helps teachers send messages to families who speak other languages. So the teacher sends it in English, and students or parents receive it in their home language. So yeah, just a way of keeping people involved and engaged and feeling a sense of belonging. Oh, cool. Jose offered a tech implementation session to set up and share gems or other customized chatbots. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jose. Yeah. I think it's really cool. Okay. So some ideas to think about from this strand of how do we support learners in translanguaging and translation. First, just knowing that language models that underpin all of these chatbots are impressive and important resources for expanding language access, which is critical for us as language educators. Also important to know that not all language models have been trained on under-resourced languages. So it's worth doing some digging. If your program has approved, for example, Gemini, it's worth doing a little digging and research on like if you have somebody who speaks Farsi in your program, like how well does ChatGPT support Farsi? If you're going to use it in that way, you might find that there are certain chatbots that don't support a certain language that someone speaks in your class. So just a little bit of awareness that's important to have. And also important to know that learners' linguistic backgrounds are an impressive and important resource. We know that multilingual learners actually bring a lot of metalinguistic awareness to language learning that helps them really accelerates their process of language learning. So always thinking about the benefits in a language outcomes aspect of making use of learners' linguistic backgrounds is important. And we know that learning a new language happens best in a linguistically rich environment. And so we can infuse and enrich the language learning process using learners' home languages and also using large language models. All right, so let me introduce you to my other student. This was a student from Greece, an older man who was totally conversationally fluent. Like we had very long and in-depth conversations. I'm sure you guys have had learners like this. His real challenge was decoding, like reading and writing in English, because he never learned the alphabet systems in English and reading and writing in English. So that was his main challenge. And so what I think about when I think about learners like that is universal design for learning. Have you all heard of that concept, universal design for learning? We've already touched on a few things that align with universal design for learning. And the idea here is really to promote learner agency and to accommodate, again, learner variability. So in universal design for learning, you design instruction using multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. So just going to pull this up and you have access to this. You can dig into it a little bit more yourselves. Maybe you've already seen it. But when we talk about engagement, representation, and action and expression, this is actually linked to some research on cognition and how our brains work. So multiple means of engagement, you all know what engagement is, right? So it's kind of just like getting our brains into the mentality of learning. Multiple means of representation has to do with how the learning is represented, how it's perceived, the different languages and symbols associated with learning. And then action and expression is how learners show what they've learned. So what are the actions that they do? How do they express their mastery of new concepts? And so in universal design for learning, we think about all of the different ways that we can give them different means of engaging with the learning, interpreting how the learning is represented, and then expressing what they've learned. So why AI in this case? Because generative AI tools have very impressive multimodal capabilities. Learners can engage through text, audio, visuals, and interaction. And so it really helps us to support universal design by giving us more flexibility. If we traditionally had something that was just text on a page, well, that's about all we could do with it. Now with AI, we can scan that text on a page and copy and paste it into a document and have it read aloud and then translate it. There's just like a lot more possibilities with what we can do with content. So, for example, let's say that I want to promote learner agency through universal design for learning. So I'm having students simultaneously listen and read with their eyes a passage. So that's the multiple means of representation. And this simultaneous input, the effect of that on learning is that this allows the brain to map orthographic forms or letters directly onto phonological form or sound. This is called dual encoding, and it's very effective for helping learners simultaneously develop their listening and reading skills and supports comprehension of reading. It has a lot of different benefits. So how do I do this with AI? You might create audio readers, and you can do this in a lot of different ways with a lot of different tools, like everything I've talked about today. So if you have something homegrown, let's say you have a worksheet that you've created in Google Docs. Well, Google Docs has a new feature that's called audio buttons, and you can insert audio clips into Google Docs. Microsoft Word has had for eons this feature called Immersive Reader, and that turns a Microsoft Word document into also an audio reader. So that's one way to do it if you have something that's in a document. There are tools for this. So we have been partnering with Pace AI to test their tool, and one of the features that we noticed that learners use the most when they were reading is the audio read aloud. And so Pace AI also supports this kind of immersive reading. Reading skills for today's adults doesn't use AI, but they do have audio recordings at different paces and with different intonation of all the passages on their website. Natural Readers is a tool that a lot of teachers use, and it will basically just take your content and give it a voice. 11 Labs is similar to that. So those are text-to-speech tools that will add some natural audio and voice narration to any content. Pretty fun, pretty cool. If you have more to add, drop it in the chat. So let's think about this example. Let's say that I want to use universal design for learning. And my learning goal here is to allow learners the option of practicing in a low stakes environment without performance anxiety. So again, similar to that one that we did before. What is a way that I might enable learners to get that practice? So let's say, we've just finished a unit on my country and culture. And they've been just kind of talking about and exploring with different language activities, their backgrounds. And I want to give them a way to express what they've learned without having too much performance anxiety. I might also be differentiating a little bit here. What could I do with AI? Let us know in the chat if something comes to you. But I might give them a choice. Do they want to present in front of class, or do they want to submit a chatbot conversation? So going back to that idea of having them use their conversations with the chatbot as a way of expressing their learning. So maybe I can give them those two options, and those that are more confident in their speaking might choose to present in front of the class, and those who feel more confident with reading and writing might work with a chatbot, or vice versa. Maybe somebody who already feels very confident in reading and writing wants to challenge themselves and present in front of the class and build those speaking skills, right? So lots of different ways of thinking about this, but the point being that we're giving them different means of expressing what they have learned. Here is but I do love this video of Donna Price, who is one of the authors of Ventures. Has anybody here used Ventures? Ventures is like a really popular ESOL curriculum out of Cambridge. Yeah, Martha has. Okay, yeah. And so Donna has also been kind of experimenting and tinkering with AI. And she recorded a video for us of her doing speaking practice with a tool that's called Pi AI. And Pi is supposed to be kind of like a nice and patient AI chatbot. So I encourage you guys to check this out later. For the sake of time, I'm going to go past it, but I just think it's helpful just to see somebody like kind of pick up on some of the ways that doing speaking practice with a chatbot are really helpful, and even some of like the hiccups. So maybe delays in its response or things like that. So check it out later. Okay, and then the last one I'll talk about is readability. You can improve readability using different AI features, and so this is an example of that. And this has also been shown to increase reading fluency and comprehension. We field tested Adobe's Liquid Mode. So if you have Adobe Acrobat on your phone, which is free, and you set it to be your default PDF reader, there is a feature in there called Liquid Mode that kind of reformats and reflows the text to support better readability and even give you personalized features that you can use. And this is, again, something you can find in a lot of different tools. Even in Google Chrome, there's some readability features. If you put your Chrome web page into reading mode, you can adjust the text size and spacing. So just an idea, again, for further supporting that diverse means of representation. So some of the big ideas here, Gen AI has multimodal capabilities that can support universal design for learning. Building learners' agency through universal design helps with language learning. And it gives variety for what's called the long tail of learner variability. And I want to just cover quickly AI literacy because this is really important. I want to show you guys some examples of this. So AI literacy is obviously essential for language learners to build. It is being aware of the use and impact of AI in the world around you, and it's being able to critically evaluate and effectively and ethically employ AI to meet your goals. What some teachers are doing, this is Yen J. Ra, also from Texas, and she set up, this is an old plugin for Google Sheets. It's not available anymore, but I'm sure there's something similar now, where she set up this kind of worksheet in a spreadsheet where learners would enter their writing. So they'd enter a sentence and ChatGPT would give a suggestion, and then learners would actually reflect on what differences they found between their writing and the AI's writing. So it's a way of them doing error analysis that helps them kind of critically look at some of the mistakes that they may be making, but they can also, and she has supported them in figuring out some of the ways that generative AI might make suggestions that ultimately aren't useful to you, like maybe generalizing your writing a lot. Oh, no worries, Brenda. Sorry I missed your reactions. Cool. Um, and Christy Reyes from California has done project-based lessons at different levels. So in this one, they are using chatbots. So they have like some ingredients and they go to a chatbot and they use prompting techniques to get a healthy meal based on the ingredients that they have. And then she has other examples here of employment where they are working on responding to specific job descriptions and they use AI to help them with that. This one is in entrepreneurship. They develop logos with image generators as they're building a business plan. So lots of different project-based ideas for using AI. These are some of our resources. They're all free and openly available if you want to check them out. And I want to leave enough. We have 3 minutes for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get to our thank you slide. And yeah, what questions do you guys have? Stop sharing so it feels a little more human here. Anything goes. All questions are good questions. Great. Well, I hope that awesome. Thanks, Lisa. I hope that what you guys are taking away from today's session is that there are ways to leverage AI, and what we should think about first is what helps learning and learners. And then there are millions of tools that you can find to make that happen. So I would say get creative, explore. Digital Aid DDN is an amazing resource to you, and I hope you guys go to their website often and put in requests often with them because they're incredible. I work with many states, and you've got a great group. I'll just say that. Yes, there's so much to explore, Brenda. And I would say, a good starting point, there's 2 pieces of advice that I would give you. One is ask a colleague. If you have any colleague that is using technology or is not, like that is going to be your best resource. Go to a colleague and say, hey, I kind of want to experiment with AI. Why don't we do it together? Where should we start? And then open up the open prompt book and check out some of those prompts and enter them into a chatbot and just see what it can do. That's really the starting point. Start by experimenting. And then once you know what the boundaries are, think about how it plugs into the kind of teaching and learning that you do in your classroom and think about how you'll integrate it in a way that supports learning. That's my suggestion. So just start with no preconceived notions, with no clear plan, and then build it into your very clear plan. Okay, good. Yeah, a lot to absorb, and you'll have lots of questions, and Digital ATDN is going to be here, and you guys can reach out to me honestly anytime. I love chatting with you. I'm going to put my email in the chat again. No problem, guys. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. This was really a pleasure. You all are wonderful, and I hope you have a great day. And let Jose know if you need a specific training, and you guys reach out to me anytime. Jose knows where to find me. Thanks. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Wonderful presentation. As always. This is the end of our AI Lunch and Learn. I am putting here a link or for our section of the professional development page. All the recordings and the slides are available there already, except of today's. Today's will be more, I would say, tomorrow. Um, but then you could access all of that there. I've posted a couple times also the tech implementation and support. So if there's anything that you need, you could also schedule a session. We could brainstorm. We could talk about it. We could help you work. Um, we could even test out what you create as well. And with that said, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you had a great lunch and um, a great time here during this week for our AA Lunch and Learn. Have a good day.